Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Adams. I'm the president of Balancing Act. We are so delighted to have all of you here to finish out this three-part makers workshop. We've got some really cool features to show you. In some ways, the icing on the cake about how this can be useful to elected officials and public administrators as they seek to have fact-based conversations with residents about financial issues and to share trade-offs and to get input and hopefully help change the environment for more productive decision making in case you need to do things such as, possibly float a mill levy or a bond or something like that. That's really what we're trying to do, is to give you all the tools you need to communicate adequately with your public. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will get underway. All right, so just the agenda for today is that we, after I give a brief welcome, we're going to turn to Thurston County, Washington. That's one of the Makers Workshop participants, to get a little update from Jennifer Smith, who's a senior budget analyst there, to tell us, just kind of show us what she's been building over the last few weeks here through a Makers Workshop. Then I'm going to talk about a tool called Meeting Mode, which I think is one of the most useful tools to apply Balancing Act and get benefit out of it. And then we've got a new app that we haven't shown you anything at all really about yet, called Taxpayer Seat. Garrett's going to actually walk you through building one of those, and this is all included in your trial, by the way. If you want to try it out and build it yourself, you have access to that through your trial subscription, excuse me. And then we'll end with communicating your sim, and just realizing there are different goals that people have in communicating their sim. Some look at numbers and they want thousands and thousands of participants, and others are really just looking for this kind of interactive tool that can help frame a conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to include a lot of people. It really kind of depends on what your objectives are, but we'll go through what we've seen as some successes on that. Okay, and then just once again about us, Garrett and I are kind of the main leaders of the Makers Workshop. Amy Kavanaugh Flynn is on, and then Peter Diederich, our director of sales. They're both directors of sales for different parts of the country, and they're on as well. And if you have any questions about wanting to possibly consider using Balancing Act, one of the two of them can certainly help you. We've also got a lot of existing clients on, which we're really happy about too, because we've got new features that are rolling out all the time, and this is an opportunity for us to share those with people. All right. Once again, it's almost like the country's going through something abnormal, right? For the last couple of years, and they're looking for a way to have conversations with residents about financial issues. And so we've had an extraordinary turnout. We are just delighted to have so many cities, counties, and school districts, and maybe even a special district or two come on board and learn with us. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Jennifer Smith. She's, as I said, senior budget analyst at Thurston County, Washington. And she's a great example of somebody who really took us up on this idea of saying, here's a free trial subscription, and here are some resources to help you try it out and build it for yourself and see if it might be useful. And Jennifer's actually built a little bit of a simulation. And so, Jennifer, I'm just going to turn it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully you've got sharing enabled. And you can just sort of talk a little bit about, what your thinking has been about using a simulation, kind of why you're intrigued by it, and kind of your experience with building it, and just, kind of bring us up to speed on what you've been thinking of the last few weeks.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. This was kind of a surprise that you guys found my stuff and asked me to do this. So just a little bit of background on our county for everybody. Thurston County has about 300,000 people. We do public hearings on our budget annually. We have a bunch of public meetings, and we get no feedback from the public. In December, I think we had 12 to 15 hours of public hearing, and we had one person who commented on our budget. So our goal is really to get more feedback from our constituents. We want to know what they want, and we want them to be able to provide input to what we're doing. So that being said, I built my simulation based on some real stuff and then some make-believe stuff. I built the simulation after we heard from Webster Groves, and So I actually took into account some of the things that he said when he put his together, where he put categories together instead of specific departments. People think of things broader, they don't know the specifics. So we try to do that. And that's actually how we share our budget with the public anyway. So that wasn't a big step. I only used one piece of our funding source. So I used our general fund funding, which is the biggest part. We have a bunch of dedicated funds, but I didn't want to get into too many specifics for this. And because I don't think the public really understands the detail between the two. So I broke this up. I initially tried to load it directly into it using a spreadsheet. I did have problems with getting my categories and subcategories correct. I messed around with a couple different things. I like, how does this work? How does this work? And I pulled it out. What I ended up doing was putting my categories and subcategories in manually, downloading it, and then adding my dollar amounts and then uploading it. And so the dollars that you see here are real budget items for our spend this year. But what I did for our revenue was make up a dollar amount. Our revenues and our expenditures generally match, but because I wanted to pretend that we had extra money, I just said that our revenue was going to be $130 million this year instead of whatever our spend is. And then I just made up that it's coming from sales tax. So this is not real. And then I messed around with a couple different things. I basically like to click and see what it does. So that's how I worked through this. And I added an impact. It's like I was telling them before this started that I had to kick my dogs out. And so I'm a dog person, so I want a new dog park. So that was my thinking on this, not real. And then on my preview, again, we have our categories. I didn't put a lot of information in on here's my information is blah, blah, blah. And as I was putting this, as I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I would put more information in here, obviously, on what non-departmental is. Nobody knows what that is, and the public is not going to know that. So I would need to put more information in here. And I'd also want to put more information on the sliding scale here, where we could add, and they can say, I would like new XYZ. So as I was looking at it this morning, I wasn't clear on what I want people to do. And so that's something that I would, if I were to build a real version of this, that I would have to do differently. And we were talking a little bit before about simulation versus prioritize. There's some things that maybe we would want to use prioritize for. Again, our biggest issue right now is that we just don't get feedback from the public, and that's what we really want.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
terrific. I just love how you just kind of like launched into this and tried some things out and tried impacts, and I think it's great. Liking to click is a good skill, and one thing that Garrett is always attentive to as our director of customer success is occasionally people click a little bit too much. And,
I've done that. I'm not gonna lie.
Unclick a little bit. So so it's perfectly safe to just try things out. And if anybody looks at the URL up there, it's a URL that no one would ever guess. So you're perfectly free to click around, add some things, try it out, and see how it feels. And it'll be just our secret for now. So.
Okay, great. And I did actually go and review both Webster Groves and City of Kenmore's. And I was very careful not to actually submit anything, but I use theirs as a user, as a citizen. Like, what would I do if I were a citizen? And I kind of use that in what I would do with ours. Again, because Webster Groves was first and I did mine simulation after them, I really thought about, he was very clear that they worked with communications and they had their communications people involved with this. And that's something I think is really important, not only in this part, but then actually getting public to know that it's out there. because
Yeah.
it's not going to be useful to us if people don't know that it's available.
Right. Oh, that's perfect. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more towards the end of this session.
Oh,
And
good
we're
segue
also
then.
we're developing a communications kit to
Okay.
help you with your PIO to drive people to it. Well, I think that's great, Jennifer. Any questions at this point for us?
I sent Garrett some questions yesterday. My biggest question is when is the appropriate time to use prioritize versus simulation? I think that's my biggest question. We do have some big projects that we would like to do, and is one of those a better method for what we want to do versus just general budget questions, because we always want to have input from our constituents, always. So we will, if we move forward with this, we would probably want something that's just like general budget. Here's our budget for the year, blah, blah, blah. And then here is our special situation, your ARPA situations, a new bond for something exciting and fancy. So
yeah. No, that's perfect. And what you've hit on is that we have a table that I didn't show last week that shows kind of the comparison about when you use prioritize and when you use simulate. And it was just a little bit too noisy for me. So we're going to clean that up and make it a little bit simpler, and we'll send it out to everybody afterwards. And then we'll even publish it on our website. That's a really good point. But just the top level, kind of the main use cases are. Prioritize is just a fixed amount of money, so $9 million of ARPA money or something like that. Whereas simulate, you can have whatever revenue sources you want. You can also on simulate, you can have more than just an include, don't include. So with prioritize, it's like I want this project or I don't want this project. With simulate, you can really kind of set that up however you want with multiple options or just kind of a plus minus. You can look at service levels. So in some ways, the question that prioritize is trying to answer is which of these items should be included within a fixed amount of money, and then what is their rank order within what should be included. And what simulate does is, in some ways, the big question of government that it tries to answer is willingness to pay. Is once people understand what government is doing, how it's spending their tax dollars, are they then okay with paying with the taxes that are needed to support that? And that's a really important big question. In some ways, it's more philosophical than most people need to do in the budget process, but that's really the big question that we're trying to answer through simulate, is to just let people know that what government's doing, what it costs, and then to help them just sync that with the taxes they pay, and hopefully they feel like they're getting a good value. And I think in most instances that they do. So, well, Jennifer, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being willing to share a work in progress. Not everyone would be willing to do that. And I just appreciate your spirit in doing that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Good. And because, we had so much to talk about last week with Stephanie Lukash from City of Kenmore, she was just fantastic. And I think she was very excited as one of our earliest adopters of using the Prioritize tool, and they've had just enormous success. I had also wanted to just say a little bit about their general use of Balancing Act with their general fund, which they also have done a really nice job with. I think it was actually done before Stephanie joined the City of Kenmore, but I actually have an archived version of it. I'm just going to show you just very quickly, because we don't want you to think that simulate is only good for ARPA stuff. It can be, it's much more common use is within the general budget. And so I'm just going to show you quickly what that looks like. So this was from, I think it was last year. And so they have a nice little introduction, and you can drop your zip code and things like that. But I'm going to go ahead and just show you what they were doing. So that, like a lot of cities in 2020, a lot of entities that were sales tax dependent, they were starting out with a little bit of a deficit. And then they've got their various spending items over here. They've got general government, and they've got contributions to human services. They've got a yes/no question about climate change initiatives. By the way, this is a preview, sort of view-only version, so no need to. I'm not adding to their data. Recreation, et cetera. And they've got police services, and they're kind of looking at a variety of options there, and mental health resources, et cetera. But then the thing that was really interesting about what Kenmore did, going back to that idea of willingness to pay, where you really want residents to understand what government is doing, what it costs, and then be willing to then look at their taxes and essentially give some tacit approval to that. Over here on taxes, they've got a little bit of a structural deficit. So even not in COVID years, they've got a little bit of a structural deficit. So they're looking at some options for for additional revenue, and some Washington state laws require that you have to have voter participation, voter approval for certain types of tax increases. And so they really want voters to understand what can be accomplished with existing resources, projecting revenue, projecting expenses, and let them choose if they want to increase their taxes a little bit more. And so they had a consulting firm that actually came up with some various options. And I think this is actually a really good use of the tool to kind of let people know that there's some options under consideration, and to let them weigh in on what they think would be most worthwhile. A lot of things that they can't change, they just go ahead and put a padlock on. Here, like, traffic photo enforcement, how vigorous should you be on that? Should you have a camera or not have a camera? These are all really good public facing issues for the public to weigh in on. So thanks for raising that question, Jennifer, that we didn't really talk about this too much, but as I was saying, the most common by far use of a balancing act is for the general budget. But because this last year has been so extraordinary, and extraordinary opportunity with ARPA, we kind of erred a little bit on the side of spending too much time on that. All right, so let me go back to my PowerPoint, and we're going to learn about meeting mode. Meeting mode is one of my favorite tools that we have for balancing act. It essentially it allows you to use the simulation as a facilitation tool. And so one of the reasons why we even started to build online budget simulations back in 2007 was that we realized how hard it was to have a conversation with the public, with non-budget people about the budget. And even with budget people, it's typically budget's hundreds of pages long. It's just a very complicated thing. And so what we tried to do was to create a way to let you sort of include everything that you want included on the simulation, but to kind of bring to the forefront some interaction points. And those interaction points can really vary. Is it that you want, you're considering a possible tax increase? Is it that you're considering adding a new program, or making a cut to a new program, or cut to an old program? Those things that we think are really valuable, and to have a way of seeing how they interact so that you can look at the trade-offs was really kind of the goal. But essentially what it is it's a facilitation tool. It's a tool to help you have that high quality conversation, to focus it, to have it be fact-based, and for you to see interactions and effects of trade-offs. Another way of thinking about a facilitation tool, I think, is to think about it as a leadership tool. So it's really a way for public administrators and for elected officials to lead the community in having a conversation, a fact-based conversation about what it is that the government's doing, how much that costs, and the corresponding side, which is looking at the revenue. So thanks for pointing out that we didn't really touch that too much, Jennifer. And if anybody's interested in seeing more examples of it being used in a general situation, that's kind of our jam. We've got hundreds of those that we'd be glad to show you. So meeting mode is an extension of the simulation, and it is intended to allow you to create a special URL that can be distributed just to meeting participants, whether it's online or face-to-face, and then it lets them, and then it allows you then to see what those meeting participants said on the simulation in real time, and then have a discussion about it. It's been a really powerful thing. Let's see. So what it involves is two views. So the facilitator view is the one that you, as the administrator, would use to kind of sort of show what people's results were. And then the public view that you distribute out to really anybody who you want to be in this meeting, whether it's face-to-face or in person. I'm going to show you what those look like in just a sec. This is an example of using meeting mode in a big group setting. This is 500 people. And the idea here is that each table got one laptop, and they're having a conversation about what they'd like to select on Balancing Act. And then their results are being shown in real time up here. And just once again, a really powerful way to let people kind of see what's going on, to see their results, to see others' results, and then based on what the results are, the leaders of the meeting can then have a discussion about it. It works in a face-to-face setting. It also works very well in on a Zoom setting. This is from a city not too far from Jennifer in Washington State. This is from Tacoma, and in the summer of 2020, they could not have face-to-face meetings. And so they put this meeting opportunity online, and they had it on Zoom. And I think that 380 people register for it. And this is a senior budget analyst at Tacoma. He's the one that kind of built the simulation. this is their budget director, and then this is their strategic planning director. And as residents went through the simulation, their input was being registered in real time here, and then these guys could comment on it. And if something looked like it was trending in an unusual direction, or maybe a way that might concern public officials, the public administrators actually charged with running government, they could then say, hey, look, if we really cut, public works, or if we cut the pavement program too much, it means, we're going to look forward to a lot more potholes. Or, particularly in the summer of 2020, there was a lot of pressure, a lot of popular pressure on police. So it actually created an opportunity to have a fact-based conversation about what is it that we really want from police, and how can we apportion our budget accordingly. So I'm going to talk to you about how to set it up. I think this is my last slide before I go live. It is. So I'm going to go to my live environment here, and I'm going to go over here to the back end, which I hope most of you are familiar with now. This is how you set up your simulation, simulate, prioritize, analytics is the results, and then meeting mode is down here. I'm going to show you how to set up a meeting. It's just so darn easy. I feel like I don't even need to show you, but I'm going to show you just for the sake of form here. So you create a meeting, and we're just going to say, makers workshop example, and then you choose what simulation. Most of you are only going to have one active simulation at a time. This is our sandbox account, so we've got several. So I can go down here, and I can just pick one. This is kind of our main demo. We call it Features Demo 2.0. And then I'm going to say continue, and it's going to build it. And then I've got some things, like some optional things I can fill in here if I want, but you really don't need to do anything. You just need to save it. And then you come over here, and then it's there, and you open this up, and then this is how you get that facilitator view that I showed you. And this is the public view, and you can copy the links here, and you can edit it if you want to. So I actually went ahead and pre-made one just a few minutes ago that I'm going to show you. I had to arrange the windows in a certain way. So let me see if I can pull that up so that you can see what's going on. So this is a version of meeting mode that is it's identical to the one that we just looked at. And I'm going to show you how it works. So this is the facilitator screen. This is what you'd have projected, presumably, or you'd be showing over Zoom, or if you've got a room full of of folks, you can show it to them. It's visually distinct. It's got this different colored background, so you don't get it confused. And then this is what the users looks like. Sorry, my Zoom toolbar is getting in the way here. So it looks just like the regular simulation, and so people can go in and they can register their opinions. They can increase police operations. They can say that they want to use civilians instead of sworn officers to take police reports. They can, decrease detention if they wish. And once they make their selections, they just submit it. And what this does is it says, okay, I've had a chance to review these things, and now I'd like it to register. And about every 60 seconds or so, it updates over here, maybe 30 seconds, it updates over here. But I can go through and I can make a few more. I can say I want to increase some parks. Okay, you just saw it updated over there. I can increase parks, and I can decrease parks maintenance. I've got a little warning here that says, you know what, if you really cut your maintenance too much, that might cause some damage. I can, look at some, rec center hours and so forth. I can maybe choose some capital projects that I want to spend some money on. I can submit that category, and I need to go back over here and make sure I submit the category, and so forth. And I can go over here on taxes, and I could say, I want to increase my property tax just a tiny bit, and this is letting you know that you have to have voter approval, so you can make that change and so forth. And so now if I click over here and I just want to refresh this, it's had exactly one input. And so you can go down here and you can see that one person increased this, and one person chose civilians were appropriate and decreased. And then over here, a couple of decreases, one increase. Here we've got a couple of projects selected, and over here you've got sales tax unchanged because we didn't do anything with that. Property tax increased. So then I can go over here. This is just for the sake of argument. You'd never have two windows. One person would never have two windows open. But you can go over here and just say that this is user number 2. You can go over here and they can say, I really want to cut police operations quite a bit, and I don't want to use civilians, and I want to increase detention, and I'm going to submit that category. And I can go over here and I can increase parks a little bit. and so forth. And I'm just gonna, I think for the sake of demonstration, I'm gonna stop there. And then we can go back over here and we can refresh it. Like I said, it refreshes on its own about every 30 seconds. But now we can see what additional people have said. So in this example, one person increased it, one person decreased it. It shows the amount, it shows the average over here, et cetera. And this is just intended to be a really nice way to let people kind of see what other people are doing. But more importantly, as I said, we started out as a public policy facilitation firm. We became frustrated with how difficult it was to talk about budgets. So we created this online interactive simulation. It's really a facilitation tool. It's a way for you to have a conversation with your community about what they want and what they're willing to pay for. And it can, and if you want it to be, it can really be a powerful leadership tool too, to kind of lead people in terms of thinking, gosh, we should do these things, and we want to be sure to have the resources to do it. So that's how you set up Balancing Act meeting mode. Once again, we have videos on this, and we've got a help article on it that we can share with you. Please try it out. Once you have a simulation, if you've gone as far as Jennifer, you are as far as you need to be. And now I'm going to turn it over to Garrett, who's going to talk to you about tax per receipt. But just as a way of introducing it, I'm going to stop sharing, Garrett, while you bring your screen up, and I'll tell you the creation story behind tax per receipt. When we started doing Balancing Act, when we really started looking at how to create this tool that's optimized for local government, our subject matter expert was my hometown. I live in the city of Denver, and so the CFO was our subject matter expert, and she helped us come up with the specifications and kind of the interactions for the general budget simulation. And once we got that to a point where we felt as though we were about ready to be able to release it to for local governments around the country and around the world to use, she said, there's one more thing I'd really like to have. I'd really like to have the ability to demonstrate to residents the good deal that they're getting with their Denver taxes. And so she gave this example of traveling around to chambers of commerce and community groups and civic groups, and just being, talking to Denver residents about, about what was in the budget and what that process looked like. And she would always start out her conversation, her presentation, by saying, "How much do you think the average Denverite spends on snow removal?" And usually the questions the responses would be, $200, around $200, $225. And so she would then get a big smile on her face, and she'd say $12.50. How is that for a deal? And so what this is intended to do is to give your residents an opportunity to estimate the taxes that they pay to your city or county, and then to get a detailed breakdown. And it actually uses the same categories that are in simulation and prioritize. And you can internally, you can even just transfer those categories and those amounts right into tax per receipt. And then it gives them a sense of what their tax dollars are going for. And whenever we've used this with groups, people have been really shocked to find out how much they get for their tax dollars. So it's just a really nice tool. It's one that I think it sits on top of Simulate really well. We've got a couple of entities that only use tax per receipt, but we actually think they both work very well together. Simulate is a little bit more periodic when you're doing budget preparation, or when your manager has proposed a budget. It's a great time to have that kind of a conversation. But the tax per receipt is something that is useful all year round. And as I said, once you have a basic version of your simulation, you've got 95% of the work done to get the tax per receipt done. So I'm going to turn it over to Garrett, and he's going to show you how to make one.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. So I'll share my screen here. All right. So I just want to give even a little bit more background, just because with taxpayer receipt, it really utilizes the same types of data that we saw in the first workshop when we talked about simulation. So here, the 5 types of data that you'll see in taxpayer receipt are category, subcategory, amounts, more info, and more details. So over here on the right-hand side, this is just a screenshot from a taxpayer receipt. You would see the category be social services and community advocacy. Subcategories are all the items below, such as homeless services, Office of Children Affairs. And then all these items and subcategories have amounts associated with them, which we'll see in a little bit. And then for more info and more details, similar to the simulation tool and even the prioritize tool that we saw in week 2, when a user clicks on that blue info icon, more info appears. And then if they click on the more details, that's where you can embed videos, PDFs, and all of that. So what I want to do is actually just show you a live version of a taxpayer receipt. Let's see. So here's an example from the city of Denver. And the city of Denver typically relies on sales and property taxes. So all the questions here on the taxpayer receipt are intended to estimate how much a resident pays for services. So the first two questions that they're asking are about annual income and what is your age. So for these two questions, and these aren't always populated on the taxpayer receipt, but if you do want these questions, we actually utilize the Bureau of Labor Statistics consumer report just to estimate how certain income and age actually impact tax contributions. And what I mean by that is it's pretty clear that a 30-year-old, let's say I'm a 30-year-old here in Denver, will probably spend more consumer goods than an 80-year-old in the city of Denver. So here, I'm just going to go through these questions. I'm 30 years old. The annual income, let's say this 30-year-old makes 50,000. And then the next question being asked here is, what percentage of your shopping for goods and products do you do in Denver? So this is calculating sales tax. So let's say, again, I'm 30 years old. I spend a lot within the city of Denver. Let's say I spend 70%. And this is actually a good way to highlight the importance of your residents buying local products within the city, because then the city can utilize those sales tax funds to enhance the community. So that's just a good way to highlight that as well. And then the next one pertains to property tax. So here, do I own a home? Let's say yes. And then this prompts a question that says, what is the actual value of your primary residence? So you can ask for actual value, market value, or even assessed value. So what I'll do here is actual value. Let's say the actual value is 400,000. So once I plug in all this information, I'm going to click on view my taxpayer receipt. And now I'm actually able to see where my property and sales tax dollars are going towards. So here, as I scroll down, I can actually go down to the category of governing, for example, and I can actually see that 94 cents goes to the mayor's office. And then I can click these informational icons, again, thinking about those 5 types of data, just the more info and more details. I can click on this and actually learn more about what the mayor's office does. And then I can scroll down and look at Parks, Rec, and Culture. So I can see how much I'm spending towards the Denver Public Library, $22.68. Click the info icon, learn more about it. Then at the very bottom, scroll all the way down, I can actually see my total here. And again, this is all estimated. and then I can actually click on the info icon and it'll break out in terms of what I'm paying for sales tax versus what I'm paying in property tax, what that number comes from. And then if you do use one of our other tools, like the simulation tool or the prioritize tool, you can actually even link it down here. So you can say, are these the right priorities? So you could actually directly link your simulation here. I think in this example, it's actually a simulation built in Spanish from the city of Denver, but it automatically links here. So then they can go through here and label their priorities and all that. So what I'll do now is actually show you how to build one. So I'm going to go into the admin portal. And again, from the dashboard that Chris was just in, you can see simulate, prioritize, analytics, meeting mode. And I'm going to click on taxpayer receipt. Now I'm going to begin by creating a taxpayer receipt. So first off, you give it a name. So let's say this is just Garrett demo. Here you're able to select the language. We'll stick with English. And there's actually multiple ways of how you can get started. So you can start from scratch, which is what we'll do here today, but you can also duplicate from a simulation that you built. So again, we do see, Chris mentioned that some clients just purchase a taxpayer receipt, but for those that actually incorporate simulation with it, I can just duplicate all that data from the simulation and it'll actually help get me started on the taxpayer receipt. So again, just really easy to launch one from there. And then here with duplicating a taxpayer receipt, this is just a great way to kind of build an initial taxpayer receipt, and then year by year, you just duplicate it, update some numbers. So it's really easy. Just once you get your first one built, is to continue to push it year by year. But I will go ahead and start from scratch here. Click continue. So here, there's 3 data points of entry. We have our revenue, which we'll put in our revenue sources, our spending. This is where we'll put in our spending categories, and then just general settings here. So beginning with revenue, we're gonna decide which tax calculations we want this to all operate from. So the 2 most popular ones, and just thinking back to the Denver one, they use property tax and sales tax. So let me go to property tax. And then as I scroll down, I really do recommend just to look at these nice screenshots over here, because the highlighted portions of these screenshot just shows you exactly what I'm changing over here. So here, the first question is, do you want to ask, do you own a home? So you can just check box that, click it on and off. I'll keep it on. But then let's say I want to ask the question once they select yes in that scenario. So I'll do what is the, and I'll do assess value of your residence, question mark. So again, that text is going to appear down here. And as I scroll down, this is the multiplier value. So here, this is where you'd actually enter your mill levy. And here in the small text, you can see that if you have a mill levy of 80.78, just enter it in a form of a decimal. So I'm just going to use this example here and grab that. And what this is actually calculating, let me put a decimal there, is that it's going to take the assessed value that the user plugs in and multiply that by the mill levy. And that's how the property tax will be calculated in terms of how all the spending items go through. So then as we continue to scroll down, there's icon help content. So again, those blue eye informational pieces. So what we see is, because maybe I come to the site and I don't know what my assessed value is, or maybe I don't even know what an assessed value is versus market value. So you can say, click here to find your assessed value. And then I could easily just go and find, oh, nice, I have this up, the Colorado or the Denver assessor website, bring that back in here, copy that link, highlight this, embed the link, really easy, there it is. So that's what we just did for property tax. Let's say we also want to add sales tax. So here, this is where you enter your rate. And it's really important to just really take into account the rate that your city actually takes in from a sales tax. So probably don't incorporate the whole state sales tax. So let's say the sales tax that when I go and buy groceries is 7%, but actually only 2.5% is going to my city. So I'll put that actual rate in there. And then here, the final tab here is just asking if you want to ask that question that we saw from the city of Denver of the percentage of your shopping for goods and products. Do you want to include that as well? So I can apply that percentage to the final calculation, and I'll just keep that on for now. So what we did there was just enter the revenue. So now we'll go to the spending side. So again, if you did have a simulation, really easy. This would already be populated if you just duplicated from a simulation. But if you don't, and you just want to start from scratch, you can import via CSV or add directly. So again, as a reminder, this is what the CSV import looks like. So you just have your categories. So these are my categories down here. I have my subcategories down there and the amounts associated with each of these items. So these three are required for the system to match it and then populate it on the taxpayer receipt. If you want to take it a step further, which we recommend, is that you just also include more info and more details, just so it's provides more context to the user. So for the sake of time, I have one already built and filled out. So I'm going to go in here, grab my spending, click open, and there it is. Again, really easy to load, and it's really quick. So my categories were police. The subcategories below are these three items. And as you can see, I've incorporated the amounts associated with them. And then I actually also had some more info in there as well. So we have our revenue, we have our spending. The final piece is just the settings. So here, similar to the revenue side, you can actually look at these screenshots over here. And this is, again, what you're changing. So you can customize. This is just the default that we plug in, answer a few questions to estimate how much you paid. But you can go ahead and change that if you want. And as I scroll down, you can also change the call to action button as well. So the default is just view your tax receipt. Again, you can kind of protect yourself and say view your estimated tax receipt. So just easy fix there. And then again, we have more about text. So this is really important because this is where you can kind of just explain why you're using the tool. Again, it's just an estimation. And if anyone has more questions, you can email this person within your department. So I'll just say about text here. And then as we scroll down, this is where you can actually, again, continue to plug in links to other outside sources. So your county website, or again, you can use those that question at the very end when they finish their plugging in their information and see the taxpayer receipt, and you can link them to the other tools that you might be using, Prioritize, Simulation, or again, some other external site if you'd like. So now that I have all that plugged in, I'll go ahead and preview this. So there's my town logo in the upper left-hand corner. There's my about text here. And here it's, do you want a receipt for your Garrett demo taxes? So obviously that's just what I named this. But we'll go ahead and plug these in to see if it worked. So we'll do annual income. We'll say again, 50,000. Age, we'll say 65. Percentage of goods and services bought within the locality. And again, you can change that so you can actually have your city's name if you'd like. For this sake, we'll do 50%. Having trouble typing. Do you own a home? Let's say yes. Instead of what we saw in the Denver one, it was actual value. So here's just assessed value. So I can click on this info icon, find my assessed value from the website. Let's say I do all that. I find that my assessed value is actually 22,000. And then, as you can see, our call to action button, the default was view your tax receipt. Now it's view your estimated tax receipt. Click on that, and there it is. So I'm able to see all those the categories and subcategories that I had on my spending side. I have incorporated some info on some of these items here. And then I'm able to see that $31 is going to detention, $70 is going to parks, et cetera, et cetera. And there's my final total there. So,
And just more typically, there'd be quite a few more line items on there, so it would be distributed a little bit more broadly, so the numbers would be smaller.
good point. And I think that's all I had for taxpayer receipt. Was there anything else, Chris, I could add or?
No, I think that's terrific. Thank you, Garrett. That's
Okay.
really very
Perfect.
helpful. And let me pull up the next part here. Okay, let me share my screen. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about communications. And really, your communications goals are really your communication goals. We've seen a wide variety, but I will say that generally, I think people, public entities feel as though once they've built a simulation that accurately portrays spending and costs, that there's generally an interest. Oops, there we go. Sorry. There we go. Sorry, there's my video. That generally it's you want people to use it. I mean, and there are some exceptions. So I don't want to make that generalizable. We've had some entities that have used it, just with a Citizens Academy. So essentially, they're making it for 20 or 30 people. But generally, there's an interest in having as many people as possible. And sometimes we're asked about benchmarks for what should we expect. And I would say that typically if you have about 0.1 or 0.2% of your population that you're doing well, and that's a whole lot more than Jennifer was talking about, where she talked about Thurston County having, I think, 0 over several hearings. Typically, we hear that public hearings have about 3 people attend, 3 members of the public. But I think those entities that do extremely well, have maybe 0.5%. And if you think about it, that's really quite a bit. So if you have a city of 10,000 or so, if you had 500 people or 50 people participate, or 100,000 if you had 500 people, that's actually a pretty good response rate. We've seen response rates up around 2,000 or 3,000 in some larger places. City of Tacoma had I think a couple thousand using it, and then something like maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people actually spending time on the site. So it really varies quite a bit, but I think no matter what, you're going to get an awful lot more than you would in typical forms of budget engagement. So this slide you might recognize from the first session that we did, where we talked about my 3 C's of budget engagements, constraints, context, and consequence. Well, there's really a 4th C, and that's communication. So trying to to get your simulation out so that people can experience the trade-offs that you want to frame up for them. And so we've kind of got 5 main successful strategies. So email marketing. So if you're an entity that is fortunate to have an email marketing program where you can communicate with residents. I know I get an email from the mayor of Denver, I think every Friday afternoon, just kind of keeping me informed about what's going on. I also get an email from my city council member letting me know what's going on. I think I get that about once every 2 weeks. That's a terrific way, and that's really one of the main movers, I think, in terms of getting people to participate. It's a much easier ask too. If you're sending out an email marketing piece, much easier for people to click on that than it is if you're inviting them to come to an evening meeting, which is just not something that many people are willing to do. But what we found is that if it's convenient and useful and meaningful, that they'll easily give you 10 or 15 minutes of their time to weigh trade-offs. Earned media, I've got some great examples of that. Balancing Act is actually very telegenic. Radio, TV, print media, they really like it, and they promote it pretty broadly. Elected officials. So one of the key things, I mean, elected officials are in some ways the public face, the public's face that are visible to the public. They run campaigns to get elected, so they're usually well known. If you can get them to help you promote it, that can be a really powerful thing. And we've really seen social media promotion by elected officials being very effective at moving the needle. Social media, I've got some examples of that. It can be very, very effective. And then we're also seeing a lot of events, whether or not they're online or offline. And that's why we wanted to show you meeting mode today, is that it can be really powerful to gather people together. That example I showed you from City of Tacoma, where they had a Zoom meeting, they had 382 people register for that, which is pretty remarkable. And we've had face-to-face meetings, where maybe 70, 80 at a time would come to it. And it's just much more dynamic to ask people to come and weigh trade-offs and use a simulation than just to come to a hearing. which is often doesn't provide too much for them to do except be angry at you for 3 minutes at a time or so, 3 minutes at the mic. Okay, I want to show you just a couple examples. This is a TV station in Norfolk, Virginia. This is the TV anchor. This was after the city had just gone through pretty extensive public engagement on the budget using the tool, and their elected leadership and professional leadership wanted residents to know that it was really imperative that they spend money on some kind of non-sexy things like stormwater improvement, some increased pay for experienced firefighters and police officers so that they didn't get hired away by neighboring jurisdictions. So just some things that really weren't all that sexy, but they needed to do it, and it resulted in a slight tax increase. And I love what this anchor did. So sometimes the media can just be antagonistic to government. What this particular anchor did was he pulled a screenshot of Balancing Act on a big touch screen, and he said, okay, if you don't like the proposed tax increase, then you show the city what you would cut. And we think that that's actually a major success. So it's basically saying, you know what, tell us what you would do if you were in our situation. The budget director reported that he had told his staff to show up with their briefing books because there was a tax increase on the docket for that night. And he thought it was going to be just horrible. And he said 2 people came, they showed up, they said, we don't like taxes at all, and they left. And then the city council felt like they had a strong mandate to do what was best for the city, which is to invest in things like stormwater. Newspaper and print, this is Quincy, Illinois. City Treasurer Linda Moore is optimistic that the city's new budget simulator, which will be presented to the public, blah, blah, blah. Once again, there's all sorts of examples of this. We've been just monitoring them over the last few weeks at Balancing Act, and there have been several that we've seen in terms of print media. Radio, this is Dane County, Wisconsin. It's a big county that surrounds Madison, Wisconsin, their public radio station. This top one is Syracuse City School District. They've had all sorts of success. Syracuse City School District has really institutionalized budget engagement. They've really done a nice job, and it's really created this nice two-way conversation ongoing, so that they have the wherewithal to have these fact-based conversations with residents, no matter what's going on, even if it's as weird as the last 2 years have been for public entities with COVID. Television, this is the mayor, the former mayor, I guess he just stepped down, or his term ended just a little while ago, Mayor Peduto of Pittsburgh, and this is on the local CBS affiliate. Lynchburg, Virginia, they actually had 2 different stations. So it's not just a big city thing. Lynchburg, Virginia actually had 2 different TV stations covered their version of Balancing Act, which we thought was really cool. Utility bill insert. I know that a lot of places are moving to electronic utility bills, but this is actually kind of a favorite. This is City of Charlottesville. They just put in a nice little video, graphic, and they just said, tell us what you think. And they had, I think, a couple thousand people out of a town of around 35,000 participate. And I think, once again, a big success. Social media. This is Stillwater, Oklahoma, just saying, here we are in the budget cycle, and this is your chance to provide some input. We're in budget preparation. This one over here is from Kansas City. They're one of our oldest clients, and they've always done a really nice job getting the word out. And then this one, I hope this shows up on over Zoom, but I thought this one was kind of funny. And since Jennifer was telling us about dog parks, I thought it was kind of cool. So it says, if this good boy can provide input, so can you. What are your priorities for Stillwater's budget? And then watch it. And so it says, how many new dog parks should the city build? Choose one. None, 2, 6. Make the whole city a dog park. And that cost $1 billion. And so the dog's quite happy with that. So, budget engagement doesn't have to be humorless. During COVID, we've actually seen an awful lot of just, looking straight into the camera and just being straight with people about, what the situation is. And so that was more last year when sales tax revenues were so decreased. This year, when there's ARPA funds, we're actually also seeing elected officials wanting to have, be associated with this opportunity and to help lead the conversation about, what are the best expenditures of ARPA funds. So it's actually been a really nice thing. And I think also, just as we're doing right now, and I'm sitting here in my home office, and we've all become a little bit more accustomed to informal video. And so I think, we heard, I think it was Stephanie said that it took her and their communications director an hour to shoot a quick little video for Kenmore. So, just a quick little video, 60, 90 seconds, just kind of putting a face to it can be really powerful. Events. So this is actually a big school district, and the superintendent and the school board wanted to gather parents. This is only a portion of the auditorium. It was really a huge room. They had about 500 people there that night. Up on stage, the superintendent and the school board president and I think the teachers union president all got up and said, look, if we don't do something, if we don't change our revenue situation, in 2 years, we're gonna have to make some significant cuts. And so we need you to help us decide if we want to make those significant cuts, or if you're interested in considering a tax increase. And so they talked to everybody in a big group here. And I love this. And the superintendent sent all the parents to the classroom. And then they had teachers facilitating a conversation about what made the most sense in terms of moving forward, in terms of possible spending cuts versus possible revenue increases. We're also seeing some branded campaigns. It doesn't have to be heavily branded campaign, but I think there's an axiom in communications that it's not enough to just do it once. That you need to kind of have a concerted effort to really bring people online and have them come on board. And we're finding out with Balancing Act that it's great to do it 1 year, but if you just do it 1 year and then stop, well, you've left some money on the table. So it's really important. And this is what GFOA is also recommending, to institutionalize budget engagement. And so having a campaign can be a really powerful thing. So this is Cherry Creek Forward. This is Cherry Creek Public Schools. Engage Roseville. They actually won the GFOA Award for Excellence with their Engage Roseville project. And if anybody's interested, we have a case study on that. And the Alliance for Innovation, a group of cities and counties that are pride themselves in innovation, actually did a nice webinar. We can share that with you as well in the follow-up email. And then this one over here, and I'm somewhat reluctant to even talk about Phoenix because it's one of the biggest cities in the country, but they actually did a really nice job. And it's not something that's out of reach for other people. They created a website, or it's actually a page, but it's an ongoing page called Fund PHX, Fund Phoenix. And then they have about a 2-minute video here that just talks about dollars and cents in the Phoenix budget, just to let people know what's going on, to demystify it, so that people can trust that dollars are being spent wisely, that there's a good process to make those allocations. So once again, it doesn't have to be very hard. And then I'm just going to stop there and see if there's any questions. And I've not really been monitoring things, but any questions from anybody? And if you do, go ahead and put it in chat or raise your hand, and we will monitor that. And while you're thinking of your questions, I'm going to go ahead to our last slide. So what's next? So hopefully, I think a number of you have been with us throughout, and we hope that many of you will join Jennifer in trying this out and clicking a little bit, just checking things out. You're eligible for a free trial. Just let us know before next Monday. Valentine's Day is kind of when we're going to turn that offer off, but we'd love to provide as many of you as possible with a free trial so that you can try it out. Try it out, get your feet wet. Let us know how we can help. Think about the trade-offs. Think about what you wish your residents understood about the budget. And even if it's something as simple as just that it's hard, that may be the most important thing, that balancing the budget is hard. It involves hard trade-offs, and to let them sort of experience that and show you what they would do if they were in your situation, as opposed to just complaining, which we don't think is all that productive. So you've got 3 tools now. You've got simulation, prioritize, and taxpayer receipt. I think you've got the tools in the background to build any one of them, but if you need any help, let us know. There's Garrett's email down there. And if you're interested in considering Balancing Act for your city, your county, your school district, your special district, let us know. We've got an outstanding sales team that is ready to answer questions, to give you a demo, to show you use cases. I know it seemed like a long slog here with Makers Workshop being this 3-part series, but we've got even more to show you if you're interested. We've got academic research papers, we've got use cases from all sorts of different entities and situations, and we really care about what we do, and we would be glad to share with you whatever we can that could be useful to you in terms of communicating with your residents on the budget. So I don't see any questions or hands up. So in that case, I'm just going to thank you all and just wish you all well, and let's be in touch. And we'd love to chat with you. All right, thank you.